Let's apply to Multnomah University. We'll start on the Oregon Goes to College website. From the College Info menu tab, choose Apply to College, and that'll take us to a page that has a lot of really great information about what we need to do to prepare to apply, including a list of the documents or materials that we'll need to gather in order to complete the application, and a list of tips to help us be successful when we do so. Now, I know that I'm already planning to apply to Multnomah, and I've gathered all of the information that I'm going to need. So I'm going to continue to scroll down and find the table that has a list of all of the colleges and universities in Oregon. I'm going to click on the Independent Not-for-Profit Universities tab to find Multnomah, and there it is. Before I click on the link, I'm going to scan over and see that there is an application fee of $40. And so I want to make sure that I have a credit or debit card or have information about a fee waiver before I work on this application, because I know I'll need to pay it while I'm doing the application itself. I'm going to go ahead and click on the link, and it takes me directly to the university's website and to the page where the application form itself is. And lets us know that if we have any questions as we're working on this, we can call or text and somebody will be able to help us. There's also a few other clues about how this process is going to work. There are 5 pages, so I'll need to be prepared to work on those 5 pages, but it does let me know that if I'm not able to do all 5 of those pages in one go, I can save and come back and work on that later. And as I continue to scroll down, I also notice that there are red asterisks next to some questions, and that means that these are going to be required questions that we'll need to complete before we can submit the application. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that they're going to want to know about is what we're interested in studying and when we plan on enrolling. And so the first one is, which campus do we plan to be at? And so there is a physical campus in Portland that we can go to, or we could choose to enroll in the online program. I'm going to choose the Portland campus, but you can choose the one that is right for you. And here they're interested in knowing what we want to study, and the Portland campus has an undergraduate college, so to earn a bachelor's degree. They also have some graduate courses and a seminary. I'm interested in the college, and so I'll choose that. And what do I want to study when I am there? And now I can scroll through to see what my options are and find the one that I have known I'm most interested in. And I have the option, if I would like, to choose undeclared, and that's a good thing to do if you have so many interests that you just can't decide which one is for you. And that's how I'm going to fill this out. But if you have an idea, something that you're particularly interested in, you could choose any of those as well. But I'm going to stay with undeclared. And then we choose our entry term, and that's when are we planning to arrive on campus and begin studies. And I expect to graduate in the spring of 2021 and start college immediately following that in the fall of 2021. And now they're looking for information about me. And here I want to provide my legal name. That's the name that is on my official documents, like my transcripts, my driver's license if I have one, my birth certificate, so to make sure that I'm providing my legal first name. And here is a preferred first name, so if I have a name that I would rather they call me, I can enter that there. A middle name and my last name, and again, these are legal last names. And you'll notice that I don't have to provide a first name, preferred name, or a middle name, but doing so helps them to connect all of my documents together. So if you have those, it's a good idea to include them. This question is asking whether or not I've ever used any other legal names. So for example, if I've ever changed my name legally, and that they're giving an example here that if you have gotten married, perhaps you have a different legal name, or if you've been adopted, you might have a different legal name, and so you would want to enter those here. And again, that's just to connect all of your materials together. Then provide an email address, and this is the email that we're using for all of our college information, and so we want to make sure that that's also the email that we're checking on a regular basis. Now they're asking for 2 phone numbers, one of which is required and one of which is not. So I don't have a landline phone, so I'm going to leave that blank and enter my cell phone number here. That's the one that's required. And then they're interested in knowing whether or not I am okay with them texting me. Colleges might text me if they have a reminder about my application or a deadline or something is missing, or if there's just something interesting happening on campus that they think I might want to know about. And so I can choose to either allow those text messages or not allow them. If I don't allow them, then I will get that information either by email or snail mail. And now they're asking about my snail mail address. And so I'm going to go ahead and enter that here. And I have an apartment number, so I'll just have a comma in my apartment number after the city and scroll down to find the state and a zip code. And I've completed the first page and can click to go next. If I was not able to continue this process right now, I could save my progress and come back to it later, but we're ready to keep going. So we'll click next page and scroll up to see we're now working on the additional personal information. So here there's a list of 3 different types of personalities, and they're wondering which of these statements describes you best. So you'll need to read through each of these and decide if any of these 3 describe you. If they don't, then you can choose to say that your personality is different from these descriptions. But if one of these matches you, you can go ahead and choose that. And I'm going to choose experiential academics, but you'll choose the one that matches you best. Then they're looking for a t-shirt size, and they let you know that that is because they might want to send us something special, a t-shirt perhaps. So choose the t-shirt size that is right for you and your date of birth. And it's giving you a clue here that they want to know the month first, then the day, and then the year. And your gender and your relationship with the military. And so you can answer that question for you and a question about your citizenship. And so for me, the answer is yes. Let's see what happens if we say no, in case that's the case for you. And then it starts to ask you additional questions about your permanent residency. And if you were not that, then it will give an opportunity for you to fill in additional information about yourself. But none of these are true for me. I am a U.S. citizen, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. That you make the choice that is right for you, and then just continue to answer questions if they come up. Questions about race and ethnicity are optional. I'm going to choose to answer them. Oftentimes colleges will ask questions about race and ethnicity in part because they're required to for statistical purposes, but also sometimes colleges will have resources or student organizations or other information that they'd like to share with you that might be helpful and related to items of interest for you. So the first one, I'm going to say yes, and then choose the next as well. And again, there's a note reminding you that this is optional information and it has nothing to do with whether or not they choose to admit you. This question about athletics, they're asking this question so that they'll have the opportunity to connect you with coaches if you are interested in playing sports. For me, the answer is no, so I'll go ahead and choose that. But if you're interested, you'll want to say yes. And then an optional question about special needs. And let's see what happens if we click yes. It will give you an opportunity to provide a little bit of information about what it is that you have special needs about that they would want to know so that they can help you be successful on campus. For me, I'm going to say no. And now they want to know about our household, and marital status is about us, me, the applicant, and I am single, so I'll choose that. If you happen to be married or otherwise, you can choose those. and then wanting to know how old we'll be when we first arrive on campus. And for me, I will not be over 21. And so when I click on that, it's then telling me that I need to provide some information about my parent or guardian. And so I'm going to provide information about my mother. And again, these are her legal information. And they're asking for her email address, and it's giving me a little pop-up reminder that's a little bit hard to read, but it says that the email address should not match the email given for anyone else. So in other words, you can't use your own email address here. You need to provide your parents' email address and their mailing address, which may very well be the same as yours, but you'll need to retype that in. And once we do that, they give us the option to provide to add another response. So I've provided information about my mother. If I have another parent that I want to provide information about, I would click on add another response, and it will give me all of those same questions again that I would need to complete for a second parent. I don't have another person that I want to add, so I'm not going to click that. But if you do, you should click that and fill it in, and then click next page. And now this section, page 3, is asking us about our academic history. So starting with high school, and first wanting to know when we're planning to graduate from high school. And for me, that is 2021. And now I can look for my high school in the list that they have here, and I'll just start by typing it in. And I see here as I'm typing in Corvallis High School that there is one in Montana and one in Oregon. So I just want to make sure to choose the correct one. So if your high school if there are multiple high schools with the same name as your high schools, you'll just want to make sure that you're choosing the correct one. So I'm going to do that here. And if for some reason your high school wasn't in the list, you could click this box. And if you do that, it will give you the opportunity to fill in information about your high school. That was not true for me, so let's unclick that. And it still knows that I went to Corvallis, and we can move on. Question about homeschool. I'm not a homeschool graduate, so I'll say no. If you are, you can go ahead and choose yes. Same with having earned a GED. Now there are questions about SAT and ACT, or admissions tests. And they're just asking whether or not you have taken or plan to take those tests, and you do not need to take those tests to apply to Multnomah. But if you have taken them and want to share your scores, you can indicate that by clicking on the appropriate box. And now they want to know if we've attended college or university. For me, the answer is no, but if the answer for you is yes, you'll click on this and it will ask you additional questions, including if you've completed college credit during high school as part of a dual enrollment program. So if you have dual credit, you'll want to click yes to the question about attending college or university, so that you can then click yes about completing college credit during high school. Okay, but for me, again, the answer is no, so I'm going to leave that as no and go on to the next page. And now I am being asked about my faith and providing a personal statement about that. Multnomah University is a Christian university, and so there are going to be questions in the application about our relationship with religion. And so the first question is asking about our commitment to Jesus Christ as a personal Savior. And the best advice that we can give is to make sure that you're answering these questions as honestly as you can. And so I'm going to go ahead and make some choices here. And regardless of which choice we made, there is going to be an essay question that we are going to be asked to answer. And so you'll want to read through these options of what those questions might be. You can see change just a little bit as you are choosing different answers, and your essay should be in response to the one that is appropriate for you. Now I have already written my answer to this question, and I have it pulled up all ready to go, and so I'm going to click over to it. I'm going to copy and then come back and paste that response into the application form itself and move on. And that's a good tip, to have those pre-written and ready to just copy and paste. The next section is letting me know that I'm going to need a Christian character reference. So that is somebody else who knows about my religious background and faith and experiences, and it needs to be somebody who is not a relative of mine, so not a family member, and it needs to be an adult. And so I should have already asked that person, and I'm going to provide their name and contact information here in order to have them be able to complete that Christian character reference for me. And there's another note here letting me know that that email address should not be the same as the one that I provided for my mother or for myself. So this is, again, another email address for the person who is going to be writing that reference. And then I need to click on the authorization to let them know that I have read and understand that whatever this person that I've asked to write my reference for me, whatever they have to say is going to be a part of my application, and that I won't have the opportunity to see that. So I'm waiving my right to review that information. And so I do need to click in order to be able to continue and go on to the next page. This next section is about lifestyle responsibilities, and so there is some important information to read here, as well as some links to some critical documents. And so you'll want to make sure that you read through this statement and that you read all of the guidelines, principles, and regulations that are in both the catalog and the handbook, and these are things that you can click to link from here, and that you'll need to read the statement about human sexuality and purity understanding, so that you are able to acknowledge those and agree to them before you submit your application. And so then they're going to ask a few questions, and again, these are all required questions. The first one is about any struggles you may have had with a lifestyle issue. If we say yes, they're going to ask us to explain that. So if you have a response of yes, you'll want to also be prepared to explain about that for yourself. And the same is going to be true for each of these. So the first here is about an expectation to participate in a local church, and they're asking if that's something that you intend to do. So if you say yes, you have no additional questions. If you say no, you'll need to, again, provide an explanation. Also remember, answering the questions honestly is important, as with all parts of the application. And then this next question is about criminal convictions or arrests. And once again, if you click yes, you will have you'll have a disclosure and authorization and release of information that you'll need to sign, and that will include another explanation. But I'm going to choose no. There's a reminder here that is basically saying, remember that you need to be honest, just as I mentioned, and that if you are not honest, that may be a reason to have your offer of admission taken away. But answering honestly from the beginning is unlikely to be a reason to not admit you. So honesty in all parts of the application is most important. And then we move down into the doctrinal statement. And this is another section that it's very important to read, to click the link to read the university's doctrinal statement. You are not required to be in agreement with all points as it says here, but you do need to be familiar with it, and you should do that before you continue to read these questions or to answer these questions. And so make sure that you are that you've read that, and then you can go through and answer each of these questions. And let's see what happens if we say no. Again, you're going to have some explanation that you need to do. So no matter how you answer these questions, that is not necessarily a reason to not be admitted, but it is important that you are able to answer them honestly, and if you need to provide an explanation, they'll let you know that you need to do so. And so again, yes has no additional explanation, but no does have an additional explanation required, and the same is true for this next question. So additional explanation if you don't agree, and again, an additional explanation if your answer is no. So you'll want to be prepared for that as you're completing this application. And then they want to know about, your participation in a church community. And so if you say yes, they'll want to know some information about your church's name. And if you say no, then they are going to ask for a little bit more information again about that. But let's go ahead and say yes and enter the information here so you can see what that looks like. Choose the denomination, and you have a number of options to choose from. And so you'll choose the one that is, of course, accurate for you. And then provide more information about where your church is located. Scroll to find Oregon. And then they want to know, how did you find out about this college? And for me, I learned about it from a friend, and so I will say that. And they're interested in what was the primary factor that influenced our decision, and so you can choose why you're excited about Multnomah, and you can choose any of these. If you choose other, they're going to ask you again to explain. You also are allowed to leave this blank, as it's not a required question. And the same is true, so remember up here I said that a friend told me about it, and then they're asking me for the friend's name. I can choose to answer that or not. This is an authorization saying that everything that I've said is true and accurate and complete, and that I'm going to agree to abide by all of the guidelines. And that includes everything that I've read about in the catalog and student handbook and in the human sexuality and purity understanding statement. And I need to make a decision here. If I say no or yes, I have no additional responses that I need to provide. So I'm going to choose that. And then I'm being asked to acknowledge these 4 statements. So it's important to read and understand that. And again, there are some links to each of those statements that's important for you to know and understand, and that up above you are agreeing to abide by. And then you will type your full name as your signature. And once you have done that, you can click submit, and you've applied to Multnomah University. Congratulations.